A hush seemed to descend over the bustling mall the moment John Wick stepped inside. Not a literal hush. Families still chattered in long lines, store clerks announced sales, and upbeat music drifted from clothing boutiques. But there was a certain shift in the atmosphere, a ripple in the air, as though an invisible presence had arrived. John Wick, clad in his signature dark jacket and purposeful stride, was used to it by now. Even in the most mundane of places, he carried an aura that seemed to impose silence on the edges of people's awareness. They might not recognize him outright, but something about his poised stillness commanded respect. He was here for a simple errand, a new watch battery from a little repair kiosk on the second floor. Nothing more. After months of relative quiet, no contract obligations, no deadly feuds, John finally felt a semblance of normalcy creeping back into his life. He moved through the milling crowds, glancing at shop windows, checking the overhead signs for the watch repair stand. For a heartbeat, he allowed himself to imagine a world where he was just another face in the crowd. That fantasy was shattered when he spotted an elderly man leaning on a cane near the escalators. The old fellow wore a threadbare sweater and carried 2 heavy shopping bags that seemed ready to slip from his shaky grip. He glanced around anxiously, perhaps looking for a bench or some assistance. But what truly caught John's eye was a tall figure looming over the senior, arms crossed, lips curled into a sneer. This younger man, broad-shouldered and imposing, was apparently mocking the old man for moving too slowly. Wick's senses sharpened. He paused behind a large decorative planter, taking in the scene with quiet observation. The bully was leaning in, saying something cruel. The old man's face flushed with embarrassment as he tried to shuffle away. "Hey, Grandpa." The bully taunted loudly, making sure people nearby could hear. "You lost? Need a babysitter or something?" John's jaw tightened. The crowd milling around pretended not to notice, eyes averted. Some shot uncomfortable glances, but no one intervened. Wick hated that old, familiar surge of adrenaline. An itch in his limbs that warned him trouble was stirring. Part of him wanted to remain a bystander, to let security handle it. But he knew better than anyone that ignoring cruelty only emboldened it. Calmly, Wick approached. His footsteps were quiet, yet the bully spun around, perhaps sensing an approaching presence. Their eyes locked. The younger man, mid-20s perhaps, wore a brand-name tracksuit and reeked of misplaced bravado. Wick's voice emerged low and even. "Is there a problem?" The bully sized him up. "Not with you, buddy," he said with a scoff. "I'm just trying to move this old-timer out of the way. He's clogging the walkway." John flicked his gaze to the elderly man, whose eyes shone with relief and gratitude. "He has every right to be here," Wick said softly. "Leave him alone." The bully's nostrils flared, and he looked ready to snap back. But the flicker of something in Wick's gaze must have given him pause, like glimpsing the edge of a knife. Even so, bravado is a stubborn beast. The man snorted, turning his chin up. "Who do you think you are? The hero of them all?" Wick's expression remained unreadable. He didn't respond with threats or curses, just held the bully's glare with unsettling calm. Something primal in the bully's mind seemed to register the danger. His posture shifted from aggression to uncertainty, shoulders tensing. Still, pride is a powerful thing, and the man wasn't about to back off in front of an audience. "I'll do what I want," he sneered, raising his voice for bystanders to hear. "This old man should stay at home if he can't keep up. Public spaces aren't for cripples." At the word cripples, John felt the surge of righteous anger coil in his chest. He gently reached for the old man's shopping bags. "Let me help you, sir," he said quietly, ignoring the bully for a moment. The elderly man passed the bags with a shaky hand, eyes moist. "Thank you," he whispered. The bully grunted. "Oh, so that's it? You're the old man's caretaker now." He forced a harsh laugh, stepping forward to invade John's personal space. The shift was subtle, but Wick's muscles tensed, ready for whatever might come next. He tried the peaceful approach. "Walk away," he said, voice tight but controlled. "That's the best thing for everyone." A small crowd had begun to gather at a safe distance. Mall security was nowhere in sight yet. The onlookers sensed confrontation, cell phones half-drawn, uncertain whether to film. The bully, emboldened by the attention, let out a dramatic sigh. "You've got some nerve telling me what to do." Then he jabbed a finger at John's chest. Wick didn't move. "Last warning," he murmured. "Don't." The bully's finger prodded again, harder. "Or what?" What happened next was a testament to WICK's training. He didn't fling the man across the corridor or unleash a savage beatdown. Instead, he simply stepped aside, hooking the bully's extended arm in a fluid motion and twisting it lightly behind his back. It was so quick and effortless that from an outside perspective, it almost looked gentle. The bully gasped, eyes bulging in surprise and pain. "Hey," he yelped. "Let go of me." WICK kept his grip minimal, applying just enough pressure to convey the message. "Apologize to the gentleman," he said, voice barely above a whisper. The bully squirmed, face reddening. He tried to free himself, but found that WICK's hold was unyielding. Panic flashed in his eyes. This was not some random do-gooder. This was someone who knew how to fight, how to restrain, how to end an altercation in seconds. The bully's bravado crumbled in front of the gathering onlookers. Okay, he stammered. "I'm sorry. Let me go." John waited a beat, ensuring the apology was heard by the old man. Only then did he release the man's arm. The bully stumbled forward, nearly colliding with a potted plant. Rubbing his shoulder, he shot a furious glare at WICK, but kept his distance. For a tense moment, it seemed he might try to escalate again, but a wary look in his eyes said he was rethinking that. Instead, with a colorful stream of curses under his breath, he turned and stalked off, disappearing into the mall's winding corridors. A small smattering of quiet applause rippled through the bystanders. John WICK, not used to public displays of appreciation, gave them a polite nod and turned to the elderly man. "You all right?" he asked softly. The old man, eyes brimming with gratitude, managed a shaky laugh. "I am now? Bless you, son. That was quite impressive." WICK handed back the shopping bags. "I'll walk you to wherever you're going, if you'd like." "Oh no. I just needed to find my granddaughter. She's in the bookstore. We were supposed to meet by the escalators, but I got turned around." He paused, blinking. "Thank you again." With a kindly pat on the man's shoulder, WICK offered a warm smile. "Take care." Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the watchers dispersed. The mall's hum of normalcy returned. WICK exhaled, tension draining from his body. He turned to resume his original plan, find the watch repair stand, fix his watch, leave quietly. But a familiar prickle itched at the back of his neck. The bully might be gone, but John sensed an undercurrent of unease. He strolled to the kiosk on the second floor, trying to brush off the lingering adrenaline. Yet, from the corner of his eye, he spotted movement. The same broad-shouldered figure lurking near a vending machine. The bully had returned, apparently not alone this time. A second man, taller, arms covered in tattoos, stood next to him, listening intently as the bully gestured in anger toward John's direction. This new arrival scanned the crowd and locked eyes with WICK. "Great," thought John. "This might not be over." He gave the watch repairman the broken battery, waiting patiently for the new one to be installed. All the while, he kept his peripheral vision on the pair below. They whispered animatedly, glancing up at him. Then they vanished into the crowd. WICK's mind whirled with possibilities. Friends of the bully? Or something else? A few minutes later, with his watch ticking again, John stepped away from the kiosk. He still needed to buy some minor supplies, a replacement phone charger, a new set of socks. He checked the mall directory, determined not to let the earlier conflict ruin his day. But deep in his gut, he knew the trouble wasn't quite finished. An odd sense of dread whispered that the confrontation with that bully was only the beginning. He made his way toward a department store, carefully scanning the sea of shoppers. Teenagers giggled by a jewelry stand. Young couples browsed window displays. Families lugged bags of electronics. Normal scenes, sure, but John's finely honed senses detected an underlying tension. Twice, he glimpsed a reflection in a mirrored pillar, a faint shape he recognized, the tattooed man from earlier. He was tailing WICK at a distance, never lingering too long in one place, eyes flicking away whenever John glanced back. Why? Thought WICK. Who are these people? Inside the department store, he slipped around a corner display of men's jackets, feigning interest in a leather coat. He watched in the reflection of a metal support beam. The large, tattooed figure entered, scanning the aisles. John's pulse quickened. This was more than petty revenge for the earlier arm twist. The man moved with practiced caution, as though used to trailing a target. Determined not to cause a scene, WICK quietly left the store through a side exit, descending a short hallway that led to restrooms and an emergency stairwell. It was deserted, the mall's noise fading behind him. He needed a moment to gather thoughts, maybe slip away unnoticed. But halfway down the hall, a quick set of footsteps echoed. He turned to see the tattooed man stepping around the corner, face set in a menacing scowl. For a heartbeat, they both froze. The man's lips parted, revealing a grin that never reached his eyes. "You messed with the wrong guy," he muttered. "My cousin says you roughed him up." "Big mistake." John Wick squared his shoulders, a resigned calm filling him. "So it's the bully's cousin. Great." Out loud, he said. He was mocking an old man. "I gave him a chance to walk away." "Yeah, well," the cousin replied, cracking his knuckles. "Now you get to walk away, or get carried out." Wick exhaled, tension coiling. He recognized this wouldn't be just a shove in the hallway. This was a confrontation that could spiral, unless defused immediately. Yet John also felt a prick of worry. The man's stance, the way he shifted his weight, it hinted at some training. Possibly a street fighter, or worse. "All right," Wick said quietly. "We can do this." A small window at the end of the hallway let in a sliver of daylight, illuminating the stark tension between John Wick and the tattooed man. The cousin clenched his fists, a muscle jumping in his jaw. For an instant, Wick weighed the merits of diplomacy, but he could tell from the man's glare that words wouldn't suffice. The corridor was cramped, with barely enough space for two people to pass each other. One misstep, and John could be pinned. He glanced around quickly. No exit aside from the locked emergency stairwell at the far end. Fine, he thought. This won't last long. The cousin lunged without warning, throwing a straight punch aimed at John's face. Wick dodged sideways, letting the blow glance off his shoulder. He braced himself, channeling years of martial arts training. This was no ring, no referee. It was the real deal. The cousin threw another strike, a hook this time, forcing Wick to raise his forearm in a quick block. The impact rattled his bones. This man packed a punch. Wick countered with a swift palm heel strike to the ribs, eliciting a grunt of pain. The cousin stumbled, eyes flaring in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected such speed or precision. Adrenaline surged through John. He hated violence, but was damn good at it. A fleeting memory flickered in his mind. The old days, the unstoppable boogeyman who put entire criminal syndicates on edge. He shook the thought away, focusing on the immediate threat. The cousin hissed, lunging again. This time, he feinted high but swung low with a knee aimed at John's midsection. Wick twisted, deflecting the blow with a forearm, but the cousin capitalized on the close quarters, grabbing John's jacket in a vice-like grip. They grappled, boots scraping the floor. The cousin tried to force Wick backward, maybe intending to slam him into the wall. Instead, John planted his weight, pivoted, and used the cousin's momentum to send him reeling sideways. He crashed into the wall with a thud, gasping. Wick pressed the advantage, hooking an arm around the cousin's shoulder to immobilize him. "Stop," he growled. "This can end now." But the cousin was fueled by a twisted sense of loyalty. He roared, elbowing Wick in the ribs. A jolt of pain flared in John's side, forcing him to release his grip. They parted briefly, each inhaling raggedly, tension sizzling between them. Down the corridor, a mother with a stroller appeared, spotted the altercation, and quickly backed away, fear etched on her face. The corridor was no place for a brawl. John needed to end this fast, before any bystanders got hurt. The cousin feinted left, then drove forward. Wick anticipated the move. He dipped low, gripping the man's waist to unbalance him. They toppled to the floor with a grunt. Immediately, John maneuvered himself into a controlling position, arms locking the cousin's limbs. The cousin thrashed, cursing, but Wick held firm, pressing him down. "Enough," John snapped, voice echoing in the narrow space. "I don't want to hurt you." A spasm of desperation crossed the cousin's face. He reached for his pocket. John glimpsed a flash of metal. "Knife," his instincts screamed. With lightning reflexes, Wick seized the man's wrist, slamming it against the hard floor. The blade clattered free. Then John twisted the cousin's arm behind him in a submission hold. The cousin bellowed in pain, but the fight drained out of him, pinned and helpless. Silence settled over them, broken only by the cousin's ragged breathing. Wick glared. "Is that enough to prove your point?" he growled. "Because I won't ask again." The cousin, face flushed with agony, managed a strangled groan of surrender. All right. Let go." Slowly, John released pressure but kept the man's wrist pinned. "Kick the knife away," he ordered, voice calm but unyielding. The cousin complied, swiping the blade aside with his foot. It slid across the floor and wedged under a vending machine. Wick exhaled, pushing himself upright and backing away. The cousin hauled himself to his feet, shoulders trembling with pent-up fury. But the fight was gone from his eyes. He rubbed his twisted arm, shooting John a hateful glare. "You don't know who you're messing with," he said, voice quavering. John lifted an eyebrow. He motioned to the crumpled figure on the floor, the knife hidden under the vending machine. "I think I do," he said dryly. "Now get out of here before you make this worse." For a tense moment, it seemed the cousin might press on. Then, with a venomous hiss, he spat at the floor and staggered off, cradling his wounded arm. Wick watched until the man disappeared around the corner. A beat passed, and John allowed himself a slow, steadying breath. Mall security would probably appear any second. He had no desire to be entangled in a lengthy explanation or risk being recognized. He needed to vanish. Retreating, John moved to the emergency stairwell door. It was locked, but he employed an old trick, slipping a slim piece of metal from his wallet to manipulate the latch. Within seconds, the door clicked open. He slipped inside, letting it close softly behind him. With brisk steps, he descended 2 flights of concrete stairs. His mind raced. Grab your car, head home, forget this place. But as he neared the lower level, voices drifted from below. A frantic woman, presumably a security guard or staff, speaking into a radio. John froze. They must be checking the stairwell. He changed direction, slipping onto the next landing. Another door opened into a service corridor. He exhaled, carefully pushing it open. Empty. Good. He navigated the labyrinth of staff-only passages, guided by exit signs, until he finally emerged through a side door into the parking garage. Sunlight from the open garage entrance slanted in. The echo of car engines and the hiss of tires on concrete greeted him. Wick scanned his surroundings. A cluster of vehicles, some shoppers returning to their cars, a few idle security golf carts. No sign of the bully or his cousin. Satisfied, John headed for his own vehicle, a sleek muscle car parked discreetly near a column. Yet, even as he approached his car, he couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on him. Turning slightly, he saw an older gentleman leaning against a dusty sedan. It took a moment to recognize him. The same elderly man from earlier, shopping bags at his feet. He must have used a different exit or come around looking for John. Their eyes met, and the old man broke into a broad, warm smile. "Thank you again, young man," he called. "I saw you slip through that side door. Well, you saved me a great deal of trouble with that rude boy. Are you all right?" "I heard commotion." John softened. "I'm fine," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure no threat lurked. "Just a little misunderstanding. You get your granddaughter?" The old man nodded, a twinkle in his eye. "Yes, she's waiting just upstairs. I wanted to thank you properly." He rummaged in his pocket and pulled out a small silver token, something like a coin with an intricate design. "You see," he hesitated. "I recognize that skill of yours. Some would say you've got the bearing of a professional, yes?" John tensed. He was used to secrecy, used to people not quite picking up on who he might be. But the old man's tone held no judgment, just calm certainty. "You remind me of a friend I once knew," the man continued, pressing the silver token into John's hand. "Decades ago, he saved my life in a place far from here. We had a code, a tradition of repaying debts. I suspect you might appreciate that code more than most." John opened his palm, studying the token. On one side, a stylized phoenix emblem shimmered. On the other, a cryptic swirl of letters in Latin. The craftsmanship was exquisite, as though from an ancient lineage. Something about it stirred a memory in John, reminiscent of old coins used by clandestine circles. He regarded the old man, heart pounding. The man gave him a rueful smile. "I'm no longer in that world, but some traditions remain. If ever you need help, show that coin to the right person. Or maybe keep it as a reminder that acts of kindness have a way of echoing." John swallowed, uncertain whether to speak. How does this old man have knowledge of such things? An uneasy fascination welled up. He thought of the hidden codes used by the high table, the markers that bound people to debts. Could this old man be a remnant of that shadowy tapestry? Before John could respond, footsteps echoed behind them. It was the old man's granddaughter, a gentle-faced woman who hurried over, concerned. "Grandpa, are you okay? You took so long. He patted her hand. I'm fine, dear. Just thanking this kind gentleman. Then he turned to John. Your name, sir? John hesitated. John, he finally said. John. Wick. The old man nodded, as though recognizing something deeper. A pleasure to meet you, John Wick. He clutched the older man's hand in a surprisingly firm shake, then let go. We won't forget your kindness. With a final nod, the old man and his granddaughter moved off, heading toward their car. John Wick stood rooted, the strange silver coin gleaming in his palm. A swirl of unanswered questions filled his mind. Who was that man truly? How does he know about these tokens? He watched their sedan drive away into the bright day. In the hush that followed, John closed his fingers around the coin, tucking it into an inner pocket. The earlier brawl with the bully and his cousin felt like a fleeting annoyance compared to this revelation. He realized he might have just stumbled onto a puzzle piece from his old life, hidden behind the unassuming guise of an elderly shopper. Walking to his own car, John paused, reflection flickering on the window. He had confronted cruelty, saved a man's dignity, and discovered a secret tie to the underworld he'd tried so hard to leave behind. Fate had a way of weaving threads together. As John slid into the driver's seat, he pondered the coin's cryptic designs. The ending will blow your mind, his old mentor used to say whenever something improbable occurred. Indeed, it felt like the start of something bigger, an echo from the shadows that refused to let him rest. With a deep breath, he started the engine. The car growled to life, resonating through the parking structure. John Wick shifted into gear, driving off into the sunlight, that gleaming coin a silent promise that the past was never truly gone, and the future just might hold a few explosive surprises yet.